Hello, everybody. For this week, you will be reading Anton Chekhov's Lady with the Dog, which is fortunate for everyone because it's actually very good. And this video is going to function like a type of mini presentation or lecture where I'm going to quickly go over Chekhov's life, a little bit about the story, and then some themes that are present within. So, if we see, Chekhov was born in 1860, putting him after the two big Russian authors everyone thinks of. Not only coming after, but his writing is extremely different from these two main Russian authors. So he focused on a shorter length, only producing one novel during his life, but he made many plays and short stories. His writing style was closer to Western realism, as he described physical, emotional, and psychological details, but did not place judgment on his characters. He left it for the reader to be able to decipher themselves based on the details that he presented. And most notable is his more positive outlook as compared to Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. So rather, he may discuss bad events that are occurring or situations that are happening to the characters, but there always remains a small amount of hope where Tolstoy or Dostoevsky would leave none of this. Besides this being the only positive outlook, he also had a overlook on the universe as being a beautiful functioning element, and that humans were a part of this entire beauty that surrounded it. So you'll see many of his characters noting elements of nature or just a happiness of being, not necessarily of anything specifically. And the one problem that he had with this was that although humans are a part of the universe, they don't necessarily have the ability to fully communicate with each other, leaving like a certain loneliness to be expected. So he struggled with this, which is also seen in the story that you read. So he was born in a small town in Russia in 1860, and his family history was not an elite or wealthy one. His grandfather bought his way out of serfdom, and his father was a failure who had a shop, but it went bankrupt. Um, Anton went to school in that small town. After he graduated, he moved to Moscow and studied medicine. After completing his medical degree, he actually helped support his family financially, as his father was not able to do that so well. Even before he finished his medical degree, he wrote stories and sketches for publication to also help financially with his family. But this is something that he also ended up enjoying, which clearly he became a famous writer. But in 1884, he did become a doctor as well as a published writer. So he published a small collection of short stories, and it was not a very serious collection where he was known for like light and comedic writing. So he continued that style of writing until he developed a reputation to his name as a writer, as well as just enough money to be able to publish what he wanted to. Following that period of light writing, he was able to move on to literary works, which he was his ultimate goal as a writer. He published in many periodicals as he regularly submitted his writing to them, and also became a well-known playwright during his lifetime. In 1884, he also had his first bout with illness. He had a hemorrhage, and this was the beginning of his many problems throughout his life. He was never very healthy. He soon faced tuberculosis, which for the rest of his life, he had to deal with that. So, through his later years, he traveled all over Russia, He lived in various places for a couple years. He did travel writing, but not long after his traveling, he soon died, and that was in 1904. So if we move on to the actual story that you read for this week, which is The Lady with the Dog, this was published later in his life, which is 1899, which only 5 years before his death, but it focuses on the story of basically an affair is the entire plot between a wealthy banker and a young wife. The plot builds off what both the characters as well as the reader expect to happen. Both characters, that being Dmitri and Anna, expected a short affair, much like a one-night stand, but from their encounter they find emotions developing right away, and neither really want to admit this. It is especially strange for Dmitri, as he slept around and is used to how he reacts and feels about women, which is not well, as he continually calls them the lower race early in his own internal monologues, but both of them react emotionally to this affair, which they did not expect. Dmitri actually seeks out Anna, as he can no longer contain his feelings after they separate, and they rekindle their relationship after Dmitri finds Anna again. And the ending part of the story is their ability to develop a new chapter in their lives, even though they're both older at this point, and to discover like new parts of themselves because they bring out new sections of themselves with each other, which also highlights like that little bit of hope that Chekhov writes with. While although like they didn't have each other for so long, and now that they're older and they're only like just meeting, the fact that they're able to find new parts of themselves in this old age. So if we focus on the themes themselves, the first theme is not necessarily a theme in the normal sense, but one that develops after thinking about your own reaction to the characters. It is a progression from moving from stereotype to developed. So we see Dmitri as this rich playboy with no depth becomes entwined with Anna, and Anna moves from a woman with no name. She starts out as the lady with the dog, to someone who is extremely important to Dmitri and continually were referred to with her name, which illustrates how we as people are quick to judge, but often develop our judgments as we get to know people, as well as we get to know characters too. But we stereotype at first. It is also just an incredible way of representing the development of the characters through the story, and the characters getting to know each other themselves, which represented Chekhov's great writing. So as you read, make sure to look at how Dmitri and Anna both become much more detailed as the story progresses, where they both move from these very simple characters to ones that couldn't fit in another story. The second theme that I was focusing on was the open ending and the ability to always discover. So I mentioned this a little bit in the previous slide, but Chekhov almost always writes with an open ending at the end of his stories. He wants the reader to fill in their own story, and he also wants it to represent a more realistic timeline in which the chapter that we are reading of these characters' lives do not end at the end of the story. So, in real life, the story would end with death, but because these characters do not die, their story ends with just the chapter beginning of them deciding to stay together and then work on how that will work out in the long run. So, the ability to always discover tied more with Dmitri, as he specifically comments on it later, actually at the end of the story. So at the beginning, he feels like he knows who he is. He continually comments on like how his feelings of women are so set in stone, and he knows what to expect, and that he thinks so little of the women that he finds when he's on vacation, and even his wife and his family do not mean very much to him. And then by the end, he has a very different understanding of women through Anna, and he understands that even though he's older, he can find this meaning that was missing in his life, and he's able to change and discover a piece of himself that was missing. So it really shows that you can keep developing through your life, and it doesn't have to end with just getting stuck in a rut, but that if you make a change and you decide to look elsewhere, that you can find other elements to yourself. So, I mean, these are not the only two themes. There's a bunch. I have 3 more here, but there's so much packed into the story that you really can't cover it, and I don't want to go on and on. But the focus on unhappiness in the early part of the story, as well as being bored, is not so much as a negative factor in this text as much as a factor to cause change in the characters themselves. Anna and Dmitri both have commentary on how bored they are with their lives. After Dmitri leaves Anna and he goes back to his family, immediately he is just distraught with how he doesn't even know what to do with his life. He tries reading the paper and then just gets lost in like meaningless tasks that he tries to just fill his days with, but nothing really works because he realizes that everything he's doing doesn't mean anything. And Anna herself is continually unhappy with her actual husband. So this desire for a different life and being bored with the same routines drives them to get together in the hope that their new relationship at the end of the story is a happy one. But whether or not it ends up being happy, this is still a much more positive outlook on boredom than the Flowers of Evil represents. I am actually running out of time on what I'm allotted on this video, so I'm going to run through the next 2 and then go to the quotes so that you can look at those. So the ability to escape the average life ties into the one above. Just the fact that if you choose to, you can move beyond what you're allotted in your choices. So you can move past the boredom that's presented with you if you take risks and if you choose to go out and explore and have adventures. Again, this opportunity of hope is different from the big Russian authors like Tolstoy. And then finally, the being judgmental is more building on the first theme that I first mentioned, where again, Dmitri thinks he can like win Anna or win any other woman, that she's like the lesser race. And Anna also assumes that Dmitri is just this playboy who doesn't actually care about her, but that she might have some fun with. And they both are wrong in their first assumptions, but they don't know that till they spend enough time with each other and figure out that they judged wrongly, and they find that there is more there than what they thought. So I think this is more a comment from Chekhov on what he's experienced through his own life with people and the communication problems that I mentioned earlier, where you can't really know someone so much, but the longer you spend, I guess, the less is unknown. And then on this last slide is just some quotes that I found interesting. There's a lot of quotes in here. You might want to pause the video at this point because it will end soon. But if you pause it here, you can read through these. I think they have a lot of value, and you can spend a lot of time just looking through these. So thanks a lot, and have a good day.